Simple. Okay, we are holding Daf Hey today in the Masechet Nedarim. I'm just going to point out to you the Mishnah, and then we'll just so we understand what we're talking about over here. In the Mishnah, the second part of the Mishnah discussed, well, from the green over here in the Mishnah, it discussed what's a yad. A good way to describe the word yad neder is called an intimation. It's a handle of a neder. It's that you didn't say the full neder, you only said part of it, but everybody knows what you mean. Just for a side point is that if you say kishmech to somebody, you didn't finish the statement, but you know exactly what he means. So same thing over here. In order to make a neder, you have to say something is usher to you, like somebody's possession, your friend's possessions are usher to you. So the Mishnah said, if someone said to his friend, Mudrani mimcha, I am avowed to you. Mufurashani mimcha, I am separated from you. Muruchakani mimcha, I am distanced from you. And then he didn't express what he means. What does that mean? Shani oichelecha, what I'm going to eat from you. Shani toim lecha, what I'm going to taste from you. Aser, it's aser. So here he didn't say, I am forbidden to eat from you, but he just said it as a yad, as an intimation, and we understand what he means. So now let's go to our Gemara, and our Gemara is going to elaborate on this piece of the Mishnah. Okay, Dalet Amid Beis, and we're by the two dots. So okay, so we're going to start over here. It's a sugya. So Amma Shmuel says, in other words, it's not that the Mishnah is saying 6 different things. You could learn that the Mishnah is saying 6 different things. That's 1, 2, 3. And shani oichel lecha, shani taim lecha is another statement. So basically, the Mishnah is giving you about 5 examples of what a yad is, what a handle is. So Shmuel says, no, there is actually 3 examples of what a yad is. So let's read it in the Mishnah again. The Mishnah is saying, Mudrani mimcha, mufreshani mimcha, muruchakani mimcha, is 3 examples of a yad, but make sure you finish the statement, shani oichel lecha, shani taim lecha. Because if you just said Mudrani mimcha, mufreshani mimcha, it means nothing. You have to say that I'm avowed to you, that I'm not going to eat from you. Otherwise, it doesn't have any meaning at all. That's what Shmuel is going to say. Amar Shmuel, b'kulam achi omer, and it only takes effect if you say ashani oichel lecha, shani taim lecha, that whatever I eat from you, whatever I taste from you, but mudrani mimcha alone means nothing. So the Gemara asks, Meisvei, I'll ask you a question. We have a brisa that says, Murda ani mimcha, mufrushani mimcha, muruchakani mimcha, right? So all these things seem to say, Hareza asa, you're asa. Hi, Alan, we just began. Dalet Amid Beis.
Okay, sure.
We're discussing what the Mishnah means when you say Mudrani mimcha, mufrushani mimcha. Is that enough of an intimation, a yad? Do you have to add on the word shani oichelach, shani taim lecha? So Shmuel says yes, because mudrani, the word mudrani alone means nothing. Mufreshani mimcha means nothing. But the muruchakani mimcha means nothing. But the Brisa says, hareza asa, if you just say these expression, then you're not allowed to do something, you're not allowed to probably eat from the other person. Shani oichelcha, if you just say the word shani oichelcha, shani taim lecha, whatever I eat from you, but you didn't say what. Whatever I taste from you, of course, it's understood. You mean that you don't want it, that it should be usher to you. Hareza asa. So the Brisa clearly says that mudrani mimcha alone is enough to make a yad. And says the Gemara, hachik tari. You have to read the Brisa this way, like our Mishnah. When does mudrani mimcha, mufrushani mimcha, muruchakani mimcha become usher? Only if when you say the ani oichelecha, shani taim lecha, if you add those words, then it becomes a yad. Other than that, it doesn't become a yad. Why is it still a yad? Because you didn't say I'm usher to eat from you. You just said I'm separated whatever I eat from you. I'm separated in what way? I'm separated because it's usher to me. That makes it a yad because you didn't finish the statement. Well, so again, the Gemara is trying to prove that mudrani mimcha is enough of a yad. You don't even have to add on to the words, because Vatanya Ipcha, there's another brisa that words it just the opposite. Shani oichel lecha, shani toim lecha, also. If you just say those words, it's enough to make a yad. Mudrani mimcha, mufrushani mimcha, muruchakani mimcha, just saying those words alone is enough to make a yad. Hareza also, that's enough of a yad for a neder. So we see, not like Shmuel, that mudrani mimcha and all these words without adding any further statement is enough to create a neder because it's an intimation of a neder. Answers the Gemara, you have to read that brisa like this. Tni hachi. When the shani oichel lecha, shani time lecha become aser is only if kvar amani amar mudrani. If you said the words mudrani, that's when it becomes aser. So it's like going with the finger to make the brisa fit with what Shmuel is saying. So the Gemara says, Ihachi, the Gemara's question is, Hainu Reisha, that if it's the same teaching as the Reisha, why does the second brisa reverse the order? V'oid, asa lama lila misnei. Why does it have to say asa twice? When it says the word asar over here, and it says the word by Mukhakani already, it says asar, it implies just saying that word Mukhakani, just mudrani mimcha, is enough to make an asar. And so you don't need to add on shani oichel lecha. And same here, it says the word asar twice. So it means to say that mufrushani mimcha, mukhakani, all these words are just enough to make a yad. So Shmuel has to change what he's saying. So this is version number 2 of what Shmuel's saying. Ella Amar Shmuel says like this. In our Mishnah, you said the whole thing. Mudrani mimcha, shani oichel lecha. But it's only time with the Amar shani oichel lecha. If you added the word shani oichel lecha, what I'm going to eat from you, shani toim lecha, what I'm going to taste from you, who the asa, the man that said it becomes aser on his friend's food, v'chavei remuta, but his friend is permitted to eat his food. But we go to Hey Amid Aleph, Aval Omar, but if you say Mudrani Heimach L'chude, if you just say Mudrani Mimcha, right? Just the word, we are avowed, so it implies that means we're avowed from each other, that I'm usher to you, your food, and you're usher my food. And presumably the guy agreed to that. That is enough of a yad to make both of them usher. Shneim Asurim, they're both going to be usher. The Madir and the Mudar, the one that didn't say the Neder. Like what Rabbi Yosef Bechanina taught. Mudrani Hemach, if you say, I am avowed from you, Shneim Asurim, they both parties become Asur. And this is the teaching of Shmuel, which is the same teaching of what Rabbi Yosef Bechanina said. Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah, Hareinu Alecha Cherem. Somebody says to his friend, I should be to you like something that's dedicated to the Beis HaMikdash. My possession should be viewed to you as something that's dedicated to Beis HaMikdash, like Kodesh. So Hamudar also, the other fellow who didn't say anything, becomes also in your possessions. Aval Madir, but the one that said it, Loi, is not also on his possession. But isn't on his possession. But isn't that similar? Hareinu Alecha Cherem should be similar to Mudrani Hach. Right, so it's be similar. So they both should be usher on each other. So how could this Mishnah disagree with Shmuel and Rabbi Yosef Bechanina? Answers the Gemara. The Mishnah is kegoin beparish vat alayloi. The Mishnah is talking about a situation where he added these words toich kedei dibar, that you on me are not usher. In other words, I am usher to you, but you on me are not usher. He added those words beferish. If he didn't add those words, yes, it would cut both ways. They both become usher to each other. So then the Mishnah says, wait a second. The end of the Mishnah says, At alai cherem. You to me should be considered like bed the kabayas. That means you to me, that means I should be usher on you. Hanoider usher, the man that spoke the neder is usher. Aval muder, but the other person who did not say anything from his mouth, Loi is not usher on the other person. So again, the Gemara is asking a question. Wait a second. You just say, if you say usher, I'm usher to you, that's enough. That's enough to make both sides usher. So how do you reconcile this Mishnah which says no, it goes one-sided? And says the Gemara, because that Mishnah is talking about going to parish, where there you said explicitly, Vani Allah Loi, I on you are not usher. So you could benefit from me, but I cannot benefit from you. But, so what does the Mishnah mean to say? Avastaima, if you don't say anything, you just say, Hareini Alecha Cherem, or ata laichem, even if it sounds like you're going one direction, what would be the din? Shneim asurim. They will both be asur to each other, right? Because this is what Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina said. Wait a second. Hamidik Tani Sefer, if you look at the end of that Mishnah, the Mishnah said, Hareini alecha, I should be on you. Ba'at olai, and you should be on me. Shneim asurim. You have to explicitly say, I on you, you on me, and only then both become asur. Hadain hu dishneim asurim. You see, this hadain is a funny word in the Dharm. Only in this scenario is shneim asurim. Hastama, but if you don't specify, then you take it for what its face worth. Who asur v'chaveri mutar. He should be asur, and his friend is permitted to benefit from him. So according to this Mishnah, mudrani mimcha should imply that I'm about from you. That means I can benefit from your objects, but you can benefit from me. So how could Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina say mudrani mimach means both are asur? How did that? It doesn't reconcile. It also doesn't make sense. So the Gemara says, changes it around. Elihachi itmad Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina. This is what really Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina said. Muda ani lecha. If you say, I am and mudar to you, so I am about to you, so that can go both directions because it's a two-way street. I'm not two, but it's not TWO, but it basically we are mudar from each other. I'm mudar to you, and you're mudar to me. But shnei masurim. But midrani heimach. But if you say I am mudar from you, that's a one-directional. Who asur? The one that said it becomes asur. V'chaverai mutar. And the friend becomes mutar. So you have to change what Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina said. Mudrani mimcha is a one-directional statement. So the Gemara says, okay, now you have to change Shmuel's statement because Shmuel is saying the same thing what Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina is saying. But masnis in the Ketani heimach, the Mishnah says mudrani mimcha, right? Heimach and mimcha, same thing. And by Kminilus Shmuel, and Shmuel said our Mishnah means bekulan achi oimer shani time lach shani oichela. The only time it goes one direction if you say ani time lecha ani oichelecha. Whatever I eat to you, a taste to you. It should be reversed. But who the asa v'chaver muta? Avu mudrani hemach shnei masurim. Shmuel says if you don't add those words, then it becomes two directional. Well, that's not what Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina said, and that's not what our Mishnah said. So, in other words, now we have to change around Shmuel for the third time to get Shmuel straight in explaining our Mishnah. Let's go back to the Mishnah again so we see it clear. Our Mishnah says three cases: mudrani mimcha, mufushani mimcha, muruchakani mimcha. But then the Mishnah says shani time eichel lecha, shani time lecha, eichel lecha, shani time lecha, asur. Is the Mishnah saying 5 different scenarios of an example of a yad, of a handle, or it's 3, but you need to add on those 2 words to make it a handle to the first 3. So where the Gemara is saying, Shmuel is trying to say something about the Mishnah, we're just trying to figure out what is he saying in the Mishnah. So the third way to learn Pshat and Shmuel, Ela mikar de Shmuel hachi itma. This is what Shmuel meant to say. Kama, it's really 3 cases, but you have to add on the word shani oichel lecha, shani time lecha. Kama de Amar shani oichel lecha v'shani time lecha. Who the ein who asa ela b'chila. Only in that scenario you become also only a food. But mudrani mimcha, if you just say mudrani mimcha alone without saying anything about food, I'm just about from you. Yes, it's one directional, right? I'm asa to you. But it's not just asa to eat from you, asa afil bahanoah. Then you become asa even from benefit. So that's why the Mishnah adds on shani time lecha is because when you add shani oich lecha, then you limited your neder to food. Ihachi, so if that's what Shmuel meant, leimer Shmuel hachi, let Shmuel say. And we're going to do with the girsa on the bottom. You have to look at the girsa in the bottom of the path. Let Shmuel say that if you don't add those words, you're also bahana. If you look in the exact wording of Shmuel on Amud Aleph, he mentions nothing about that case. Just Shmuel says, but the main point of Shmuel is that only because you said these words, you're asa b'chila, but not, if you don't say those words, you're asa b'ana. But Shmuel doesn't say that. So it must be Shmuel's teaching you something else. So here we go for the final version of what Shmuel said. This is what Shmuel meant to say. It's three cases. Mudrani, Mufreshani, Muchrokani, but you have to add those words, Shani Oichel Lecha, Shani Toim Lecha. And Shmuel holds, Tamahu Da'ima, Shani Oichel Lecha, Shani Toim Lecha. If you only add those words, then it's an effective neder. Hu Da'asar, Avol Ona Midrani Himach. If you just say those words, Midrani Himach, it doesn't mean neder. It may be, I'm a vow to you, doesn't mean that I'm making a neder against you. Lemashma Asar, Da'ama Asar. It doesn't mean that you mean that you're Asar. My timer, what's the reason? Because you could say that Mudrani Micha, I'm about from you, means Mudrani Mimcha. That means loy mishta'ina b'hadach mashma. I'm not going to talk to you. That's what mudrani mimcha means. I'm not talking to you. So it doesn't mean that I'm also to eat your food or to have benefit from your possessions. If you just say mudrani mimcha, it's not even a neder because it means I'm not going to talk. I'm not talking to you. I'm cutting you off from my email account. Mufrushani mimcha means I am separating myself from you. The loy evdine imach masa mata mashma. I'm never going to do business with you. But that doesn't mean in neder. If you just say, I'm distanced from you, means I'm not going to get into your 4 amas. So this alone would not even come to become a yad. In other words, we learned that a yad, just a partial statement, could become a neder. But this mudrani mimcha is not. It's a yad, but not a full yad. In other words, it's not a full yad to make it into a neder. So the Gemara, we go to the top of Amid Aleph, of Amid Beis, Hey Amid Beis, Lema Kasava Shmuel, Yadayim Sheina Mechichas, Loi Have Yadayim. If you have a handle or an intimation that's not definitive, it's not specific, it's not clear, it's ambiguous. Loi Have Yadayim, it's not considered Yadayim. In other words, it's a machloikis tanoim that a yad doesn't have to be super clear, or even an ambiguous, if it's somewhat ambiguous, it could still be considered a yad. So we saw it in other brises that says mudrani mimcha is enough to make usher. That's clear. Those brises say that mudrani mimcha is enough to be usher. Shmuel could argue on those brises. How? Because he holds like the other Tana that holds yudayim she'ein moichichos. If you don't have a definitive, yad, if it's not a definitive handle, it's not considered to be a good handle. You have to be more, in order to be a handle or intimation, right? Something that it has to be a little bit more clearer. And you want to say that Shmuel holds it's not considered a dayim, and Shmuel moiken lol masnisin Rabbi Yehuda. Shmuel will interpret our Mishnah like the other Tana of Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar yadayim sheina mechichas. If you have a yad that's not fully ambiguous, it's an ambiguous handle, intimation. Loy having yadayim, it's not considered to be a handle. It's not considered yad, and it's not a neder. Now, this machlokes of yadayim sheina mechichas is not about neder. It's actually in Gittin. The Tanam we learned in the Mishnah. Listen to this. A guy, you're writing on a paper a get, right? A person's writing a get. So Gufay shall get, besides the name, the main part of a get is you have to say, Harei at mutaris l'chol adam. With this, you are permitted now to marry anybody you want. Fine. But what's missing from that? What's missing from that piece of paper is what missing statement of a get is that according to, you have to say that it's with this paper you become permitted to marry somebody else. But you didn't write that. You just wrote Hareyat Mutaris L'Chol Adam. It's understood that the paper is the one that's making the get, but you didn't write that in the get. So the Tanakama holds that's still good enough. That's still sufficient to be a get. Rabbi Yehuda says no. You have to add something else. You have to add another word. That this should be the dain the heavy lechiminai. This should be from you. Sefer, a document teruchin of release. The Igera Shavikin, and a letter of dismissal. You're trying to say that it's through the document that you're being released to go to a get. So therefore, we see clearly that Rabbi Yehuda holds that in order for something to be considered a yad, it has to be more definitive. And therefore, our Mishnah, according to Shmuel, will go like Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara asks, Amai dochek Shmuel loikmel masnise in Rabbi Yehuda. What for Shmuel to say our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. You could easily say that our Mishnah would hold that Mudrani Mimcha is enough to make a neder. No, Shmuel says Mudrani Mimcha is not enough to make a neder, like Rabbi Yehuda would say that. Well, who says, maybe our Mishnah goes according to Rabbanan, that the Mishnah is listing you 5 different scenarios of Yadais. Let's say our Mishnah goes according to Rabbanan, that even though it's not a definitive Yad, it's still good. So what for Shmuel to say, no, our Mishnah is giving you 3 cases and it's a more definitive Yad because we go according to Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rava says, Mashnisin Kisheisa. Rava said that Shmuel had a difficulty with our Mishnah. Amai Tani Shani Oichlecha, Shani Toim Lecha. Why did the Mishnah say, if Shani Oichel is enough of a neder, why do you add on the word Lecha, Shani Toim Lecha, what I'm going to eat from you, what I'm tasting from you? Of course, you're talking to the person in front of you. So why do you have to add on to you? Listen to Shani Oichel, Shani Toyim. Let him just say Shani Oichel, Shani Toyim, if that would have been enough of a yad. Shma mina, the fact that with this, you have to add these words lecha, being in yadayim achichas, you need a handle that's more definitive. So if our Mishnah clearly seems to imply that you need a handle that's more definitive, then midrani mimcha would not be so definitive, because you could interpret it means maybe I'm just not going to do business with you. I'm not gonna talk to you. So therefore, Shmuel says our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, and our Mishnah is giving you 3 scenarios: Mudrani, Mufurashani, Muruchakani, Mimcha. But you always have to add on Shani Time Lecha, Shani Oichel Lecha, Shani Time Lecha. Only then that's considered like a handle, an intimation of a neder, and therefore then it becomes a neder. But it has to be more clearer. Let's just do another minute and a half, and then we'll finish. Itma, we learn. Yadayim she'enim achichas. If you don't have a clear handle, intimation, Abaya says Havi Yadayim. It's still considered to be a good handle to a neder, and the neder is effectuated. Rava says if you use Yadayim, loy Havi Yadayim. That's not considered a Yadayim. So Rava is more lenient and says no. If you just said a half a statement and it's not so clear, then it's not a neder. Amar Rava said, Rabbi Idi Asbar Ali. Rabbi Idi explained me and gave me the reason of my opinion. Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, Nazir lahaze lashed. Nazir lahaze lashed. So, Makish Yodos Naziris Linaziris. Nazir lahazer implies not just the Hareini Nazir statement, but even a Yad Nazir, even a Yodosh is considered like the main Naziris neder. Ma Naziris Bahai Haflar, just like when you say Hareini Nazir, you're articulate exactly what you mean. Af Yodois, even if you're using a partial handle, an intimation, Naziris Bahaflar, it has to be Yodos Naziris Bahaflar, it has to be articulated as best as possible. In other words, it has to be as close to a regular Naziris as possible. Of course, there could be a word missing, but it has to be more definitive than that. So the Gemara just says one point. Isn't Abaya who holds having Yadayim, is Yadayim, and Rava holds it's Lavi Yadayim? That's a machlekes Tanaim, which we just discussed. The Tanakh we learned in the Mishnah, Gufei Shaget. The Tanakhama holds Harayat Muteris L'Chol Adam. That's enough. Rabbi Yehuda, I'm evident to have the Chamin L'Chal Sefer Teruchicher. You have to be more definitive when you're writing a get. Yeah, the Kei Peturim. It has to be a letter of dismissal, a book that it's a divorce, but it has to be more definitive that it's with this document you're permitted to marry somebody. So Rabbi Yehuda requires more of a clarity in what you're saying. So Abaya, the Amak Rabbanan, Abaya holds like Rabbanan. You don't have to be so clear. Yadayim sheni b'chichas is a yadayim. Rava, the Amak Rabbi Yehuda, and Rava will go like Rabbi Yehuda, who says, "Lo yavin yadayim." No, you have to be like very clear, like Rabbi Yehuda said. Amalach Abaya, the final statement of the Gemara. Ana da Amrei afilu Rabbi Yehuda. I hold like Rabbi Yehuda, even Rabbi Yehuda. I hold by neder. You don't have to be so clear. Only by gittin you have to be clear. So I could be like Rabbi Yehuda because. Only where did Rabbi Yehuda said you have to be very, very clear. El gabe get, only by a get. The be'in increases veleka. It has to be definitive that you're breaking ties with the woman, and therefore that you have to be declared with your words that this document and this marriage is over. There has to be much more definitive because this pasuk says v'karas. It has to be definitive separation. It can't be a half-baked separation, so you have to be more clear. So therefore, by gittin, there's a halacha, you need yadayim mechichas. Ava ba'alma, but in other areas of halacha, like nedarim, mishamat, would Rabbi Yehuda hold that you need yadayim mechichas? Could be by nedarim. Rabbi Yehuda says yadayim shein mechichas would be yadayim, like I said, Abaya. Rava says, anadamri afilu rabbanim. I call like rabbanim. And that you always yadayim shein mechichas is also good, but that is only good by gitnin, because ad kan like kamar rabbanim deloy beini yadayim mechichas el gabe get. Only by get you don't need a full statement. It could be a little bit ambiguous because this is your wife, right? What else are you? When you say harayat mutaris l'chol adam, of course you're talking to your wife, and it's the paper, and so what more? There's no, even when it's less ambiguous, it's understood that you're divorcing your wife. We go to the top just for a line. A person can't divorce his wife's friend. So when you're giving your wife, a person's giving his wife and saying on the piece of paper, that's sufficient according to the Chachamim, because it's understood you're divorcing your wife and you're permitted to marry somebody else. But But in other scenarios, it's impossible. Perhaps you need more of a definitive statement because you have to be clear, because in Nedarim it can cut both ways. It can mean I'm not talking to you. It can mean I'm also to you, or maybe you're also to me. So you have to be more definitive in Nedarim because there are more possibilities with Nedarim. So it could be by Nedarim you need Yadayim Mechichas. And therefore, Rabbi holds, if it's Yadayim She'ein Mechichos, it's not considered Yadayim. So this will end today's daf, and we'll continue the discussion Be'ez Hashem tomorrow.